I think I'll first ask you to say a few words. Then Nicola Quilter, who is our examinations executive, who basically runs everything to do with examinations and the rest of us clinicians take the credit for, is Nicola. And then Luis Amaya is a pediatric ophthalmologist in London, and he runs the clinical examination and writes all the questions. He'll speak to you about the examination. He'll give you all the knowledge you need except the answers to the questions that he'll be sending. So to start the batting, I invite Hugh Taylor from Australia, who is the president of ICO.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and also to see a number of people who are here interested in the work and opportunities that the ICO provides. The International Council of Ophthalmology actually started off in the world. It now has 145 national societies and ophthalmology societies that are members, including, of course, the All India Ophthalmological Society. And one of the major roles of the ICO is to focus on education so that we as ophthalmologists can do a better job in providing eye care to the patients that we see, and that we can actually reach the people who need the eye care properly. And as part of that, we have a very comprehensive program on education. It starts off with the curriculum so that people are starting to learn the right things. We spend a lot of time trying to improve the ability of the residency teachers and training program to give better education to people. But the way to measure how well the education has gone is through the exam system. And the ICO exams have been taken by people around the world. There's more than 5,000 candidates taking the exams each year. Many of them, of course, from India, but from all other countries as well. And the exams are now structured in such a way that, as I'm sure that people will be talking about, there's the foundation exam, which when you've enrolled in to take the ICO exam, you have that free access. It's sort of like a practice exam. There's the basic exams and going through to the clinical exams, which are much more advanced. And then more recently, just last year, we started working very closely with the AIOS on the exams for subspecialty. The first one was for corneal disease. And so there's a whole spectrum of these exams to help you through a training program so that as you learn more, you can take the next exam and end up with the qualifications and a fellowship of the ICO after passing the clinical exam. So they are a very, very important part of education. They give you in many ways a passport that will work for applying for jobs or fellowships in other countries and other places where you can say, I have passed the ICO exam, and that gives you an international benchmark. Knowledge at that criteria. And it also is a great help for the ICO fellowships, which is another program that I know we'll be talking more about today, about giving the opportunity for a 3-month fellowship somewhere where you can learn special skills in a particular area. And that there are about 100 of those fellowships given a year, and many people from India have taken them. But an opportunity to go to a particular centre or institute to learn particular skills and then bring them back to your own program or system. So that there's a great deal of emphasis on trying to improve the level of ophthalmic knowledge and understanding to improve eye care that the ICO is working on. So it's a great pleasure for me as president of the ICO to know that we have all these people working hard on helping to raise the standard of ophthalmology around the world, and we really recognise the value and effort of such a large number of people. All the volunteer ophthalmologists are supported by the very hard-working, dedicated staff like Nicola, who run these programs, And so I think you're in for a very interesting and I know will be a very informative session today. So thank you for the opportunity to say a few words of welcome, and good luck to you all in the exams and the fellowships in your careers down the track. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. It just struck me that our international nature is reflected in the fact that our president, Hugh, is from Australia. Our examination executive, Nicola, is English. Luis is Colombian, and I'm from India. So we do have an international approach, taking care of the needs of ophthalmologists worldwide. I'd now like to invite Luis to share with us his knowledge of organizing the examination and setting the paper. Luis.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming. We are delighted to have you here, and hope that you find some of the things we are saying useful and motivating and stimulating. And I'll start by sharing a little bit of who I am and my journey very briefly, to give you an example of what can happen when you try the right things, you meet the right people, and you end up changing your life completely to what you ever imagined. So I come from a very little country, developing country, very poor country, called Colombia in South America. And my dream was always to be a good doctor. I didn't want anything else and provide help to the community where I worked. But I always wanted to go abroad because I wanted to see what was happening outside where I trained. My training was terrible, very precarious. I learned on my own. I had very bad teachers. I always used to say I didn't learn anything from them. Now I learned so much. I learned everything I shouldn't be from those very bad teachers. But I wish I had had good teachers that had given me better guidance and better mentoring. So I promised myself that if I ever was a teacher, I would try to do my best to share the little knowledge that I had acquired with younger generations to make them better doctors. But the other thing is that I was so lucky that I got a scholarship to do a fellowship abroad. And I managed to go to the UK. And then I met someone who mentored me, who treated me with respect, with affection, with consideration, and became a friend for life. I went back to my country, and for 10 years I worked in a charity hospital, in a very, very poor hospital. My mentor gave me all the things that he didn't need. So I ended up with his old vitrector to do congenital cataracts. He sent me sutures for free. He gave me all the surgical instruments that he didn't need. I organized courses with him to come over to Colombia to train other people. And it changed completely the landscape of pediatric ophthalmology in my country. I was the first pediatric ophthalmology there. I managed to train many junior doctors. And then I felt that I had reached a point where I couldn't go any further. But I still wanted to help. And after 10 years, I ended up in the UK. And now I still want to help in a more ambitious way. And that's why I am so involved with the ICO. And I'll explain why. The ICO is an organization that is a non-profit organization. But the ICO has noticed that the quality of care throughout the world is so varied. And even within the same country, even the same city, you see that in some centers the standards of care are very high, in others they're dreadful. And some programs trained my group was formed and was founded. So again, it will provide a new set of professionals who identify with a common denominator, is being a fellow of the ICO. But this is an example of what the ICO is doing in more remote areas. And this is a beautiful little hospital that has been developed in Cameroon, in Yaoundé. And 95% of the building is already completed, and by this year is going to be opened. And it will provide a regional training center and for the education of new generation of ophthalmic leaders in Africa, in Francophone Africa. And you know, in Africa, ophthalmology still needs a lot of development. So it's one of those areas that need a lot of stimulation. This doesn't seem to be blocked. It's not moving. Let's see if I move now. Oh yeah. Now, I mentioned before that I had lousy teachers. They never taught me anything. I trained on my own. The first cataract that I did, my registrar of the same year as me was helping me. And I remember when we had surgery, our teachers would do all the surgery, they would leave, and then the registrars would do their own surgery on their own. That should never happen, ever, ever, ever. And there are brilliant ophthalmologists, but they are very bad teachers. And again, we need to learn to become good teachers. And the ICO is investing a lot of effort and energy trying to inject in ophthalmologists the need to share the knowledge and train them first to develop professionally and keep up to date, but also to learn to share what they know with younger generations. And there are lots of options that are there available. There are courses for residency programs directors, so that if you direct a residency program, you have better knowledge and elements to be able to develop it properly. There are World Ophthalmic Education colloquiums. This is wrong. This is the OSCE, which provides training for societies and clinical sciences, and also conferences for ophthalmic educators. And there are centers for ophthalmic educators and new ophthalmic educators groups. Now, we also are involved with eye care, and the ICO is working with the World Health Organization implementing global action plans. And it's also very important to try to develop a proper definition of future diseases classification, the ICD-11. And also, there are always coming new medications in the market, so it's essential that we have proper lists of medicines that are available for eye care. And of course, there are these preventable diseases worldwide, like diabetes, glaucoma, that the ICO is partnering to provide initiatives of community care and screening for these conditions that are still blinding in many parts of the world. And of course, the development of clinical guidelines and standards. And finally, it's important to determine the data and the number of ophthalmologists worldwide, so the ICO is working very hard to try to gather all this information. We also mentioned the leadership programs that happen and professional development and medical education. And it provides support to all the members of the ophthalmological societies throughout the world, and it bring them together. Now, I am going to pass over to Nicola. She has been an essential member of the examinations. She has worked very hard for more than 9 years, and she has transformed completely the examinations. So I want to pass the word over for her to talk to you a little bit about the exams.
Thanks very much, Luis. So how many here have taken any of the exams with the ICO? Hands up. And how many are taking it this year? Great. So it's good that you're here, because you can hopefully get some information. And as Dr. Singh said, not the answers, unfortunately. We can't be bribed. So the ICO exams are the only worldwide medical specialty exams. And we've been running since 1994. And they started by Professor Watson, who unfortunately a couple of weeks ago passed away. But he had this idea, and he started them in a garden shed in Cambridge in the UK. And from then they've grown. And now we've run over 53,000 examinations. And we're running in 80 countries. And the candidates from the ICO Member Society, they receive special recognition, and I'll talk about that later on. So since 1994, the basic science was implemented, along with optics and refraction. And then in 1997, clinical sciences. In 2010, Professor David Taylor, who you may have heard of, paediatric ophthalmologist, introduced the advanced exam. More recently, the foundation assessment. And then last year, in conjunction with the AIOS, we run the first subspecialty examination in cornea and external eye disease. I'm going to talk a bit about these with Louis and Maya. So we're currently running in 137 exam centres, 80 countries. And as you can see from the chart, over the years, more recently, and I've been doing this 9 years now, the numbers have increased. And we've seen these increase internationally, and more importantly to you guys, in India. So the questions are compiled. We have an executive committee, and this executive committee is completely international. Although the exams office is based in the UK, we have international representatives from Turkey, India, Colombia, the US, and we work closely with our other programs. So we have representatives from education and the fellowships also on our committee. And we base the questions and the exam papers on the residency curriculum, which is produced by the ICO. And this is an international consensus of what we think residents in ophthalmology should be taught. And it provides a standardization of content for ophthalmic training. And it's customed to each region. So it's not specific to the UK or the US. It's an international level. As we mentioned, we run the first subspecialty exam last year in October. And we're also implementing more of these, and we've built up committees with specialists, again internationally, in cornea, glaucoma, neuro-ophthalmology and ocular plastics. And these are written papers, but they're done online. So it's easy access. We can have videos, we can have pictures included, diagrams. It's quite interactive. And we're in the process of implementing paediatric ocular oncology and vitreoretinal surgery. So standard setting, all of our exams are standard set to the highest calibre. And we have educationalists who advise the committee on how to write good questions, how to put a good paper together. And we have an educationalist for each of the exams and assessments. And as I mentioned, the exams team, we have Director of Examinations, who unfortunately isn't with us at this meeting. And we have the Executive Committee, Standard Setting Committee, question writers. Again, I emphasise, all international. And it takes a lot of people. You see us guys standing up here, and you think you have 4 papers that we produce, but it takes a lot of people to put these papers together. So our papers are all criterion reference, and what this means is that we look at where the individual should be performing to a specific learning objective. So we look at where we think you should be at your level, and we advise basic science exam. You need to have at least 1-2 years experience in ophthalmology to achieve or have a good chance of achieving a pass mark. So we look at the learning objective and where we think you guys should be at that level. It also tells us how well the candidate, so you, are performing against specific goals. And we work closely with our coordinators, and we have a coordinator in each of those exam centres. So we're liaising with them all the time, and we're looking at where you should be in your training, and that's where the exams are produced from. So foundation assessment is a preparation for the ICO exams, and I'll talk a bit about that in a moment. And then we have the standard exams, which we recommend to the 2nd, 4th year of ophthalmology, and that's basic science, optics and refraction and clinical sciences. The advanced exam in year 4, and then subspecialty after at least 1 year subspecialty training. And these are recommendations. You don't have to. We have some candidates that in their 2nd year are really confident and think, yes, I'm going to take the clinical sciences, and that's fine with us. But these are just recommendations of where we think you should be taking them in your residency training. So fees. First question I always get when I'm standing at the booth is, what exams do you have? How much are they going to cost me? So we set all our fees in Swiss francs, and we enable you to convert those into US dollars to make the payment much easier. And we offer a tiering system. So for individual applicants, our fees are set. However, if you get together within a group, of 3 or more, or some through your local coordinator. And you get together with your friends, you fill out your application forms and submit them to the ICO exams office or to your local coordinator and make one payment, then we can reduce your fees. And we reduce the fees based on the gross national income per capita, the GNIPC, but we're converting over to the World Bank tiering in the next 12 months. But that gives you the benefit of getting together with your colleagues, encouraging more of you to take it in your residency training, and it gives you the benefit of a slight reduction. So that's group bookings. We offer introductory discounts, and for those candidates in remote areas, we offer bursary applications. Now, candidates can pay directly into the ICO account, or they can pay online via credit card, debit card, which is newly introduced, and we're hoping candidates find that more much easier to make the payment. So I'm going to pass back to Louis Ameo, and he's going to tell you why you should take the exams.
Again, a little anecdote of my own experience. So I told you that I trained in a little hospital, although it was highly recognized in my country and it was supposed to be the best training place. And when I finished, I realized that I had so many gaps in my knowledge, but profound, dangerous gaps. But when you're young, you're arrogant and you think you know it all. So my dream was to go abroad, and I went to the UK to do my fellowship in pediatric ophthalmology. I wrote to 50 hospitals. I never got an answer. Finally, after writing to all these hospitals, someone had the kindness to reply to me. And I managed to get a scholarship through the British Council. When I arrived at the UK, I realized how ignorant I was. And I was far behind all the rest of my peers, because I never had a proper examination that could tell me how much I knew, how good I was, how good my institution was compared to the one next door. So these exams will allow you to know where you are, will allow you to know where you are in comparison with your peers, with the other hospitals, and even within the world context. But it also will allow you to give you enough tools to compete in a very highly competitive environment, to thrive, to be the best. And that's one of the reasons. But I was fortunate in those years to have a fellowship that was sponsored by the British Council. That doesn't exist anymore. But fortunately, the ICO offers fellowships that are free of charge, are 100% sponsored. And if you pass the exams, you get points. And the more points you get, the more chances you have to get a sponsored fellowship. So all those reasons are overwhelmingly important to argument in favor of the exams. So it has the international recognition. It's not a license to practice, but it compares your standards, and it also allows you to know how you are. The advanced exam will give you the title of FICO, Fellowship of the International Council of Ophthalmology, which also has international recognition. And there's reciprocity with other societies, like the Royal Society of Glasgow. And as I said, it gives you points. And here are the points. If you pass the advanced examination, you get 7 points, which is a lot of points. And the foundation assessment, up to 5 points. The standard examination, optics and refraction, gives you 3 points. The clinical sciences will give you 5 points. So the more points you have, the more chances you have to get a fellowship. Obviously, if you have been involved with research, if you have done community work, voluntary work, if you have had publications, if you have done research, again, you get more points for that. And we'll talk about that as well. Now, the structure of the exam is multiple choice questions. So there's a STEM question, and then you have 4 options, and you have to choose the one that is more likely to be true. In the basic sciences, you have 80 questions, and there's a single best answer. Before, the structure of the exam was true-false. Now we changed it all to a true from 4 possible answers. And you have 2 hours to sit the exam. And this is, for example, an example of a question. So, regarding the blood-retinal barrier, which one of the following statements is most likely to be true? Okay, so the advice is to read every answer first. So you say retinal vascular endothelium passively transports fluid from the extracellular space to the retina. Is that true or not? You are sure, not you're sure. You're not sure. So go to the next one. The basement membrane of the retina capillaries contributes to the outer barrier. Is that true or not? It's not true. So you are beginning to narrow the possibilities. C, the inner blood retina barrier is fenestrated. Is that true or not? It's not true. So if you have doubts with the first and then you read the last, the outer blood retinal barrier is formed by the retinal pigmentary epithelium cells and their tight junctions. That has more sense. You see, all of you knew the answer. So by ruling out, you can, even if you don't know the right answer, narrow your options to get the right option. Optics and refraction. It was discussed very widely that probably we should get rid of this exam because ophthalmologists should know that, but that statement is totally wrong. First, we use lots of devices in our day-to-day practice, and we should be able to understand how these devices work. But we are working with the eye. The eye is to see. So our basic knowledge in optics is absolutely paramount, and that's why it's so important to have knowledge in this area. This is a very difficult question, and the exams have 10% of questions that are very, very difficult. So only the geniuses will answer the question, or the very bright ones. 10% of the questions are deadly easy, so we expect everyone to answer those questions. And 80% of the other questions are sort of difficult enough to determine the basic knowledge that we would expect for you to be a competent ophthalmologist. So this question is difficult, and the figure below represents a confocal scanning laser ophthalmoscope. Which one of the following statements is the most likely to be true? So you have the structure of the device, you have the prisms, and then you have the possible answers. A pinhole placed in the plane P3 decreases the axial resolution of the system. So this is the P3. Element A is a Dove prism. Planes P1, P3 and the retina are conjugated. The detector is usually a CCD camera. So that's a very difficult question, but if you've read a little bit, you will know that C is the right answer. The clinical sciences is my favorite exam, and it's the one I'm in charge of. And the beauty of this exam is that it tries or it evaluates your knowledge, but it's your application of your knowledge in the clinical context. So it not only tests how much you know about things, but how well you can apply your knowledge to a clinical scenario. And that's why it's so important. The paper, you have 4 hours to sit the paper. And again, you have a single best answer. You have 4 options. So this is an example that I'm sure you will be able to answer. The photograph illustrates a patient with acute anisocoria and ptosis. Instillation of 5% topical cocaine fails to dilate the left eye, but instillation of hydroxyamphetamine hydrobromide results in dilation. The most appropriate area to evaluate on MRI scanning is that. So if you know what Horner syndrome is, and you know the tests that you use to determine the location of the possible lesion that is causing the Horners, this should be a very easy answer. So A, brainstem, cavernous sinus, chest of orbit. So you need to know, based on the medication that you use, if the lesion is preganglionic or postganglionic and the level where the lesion is. Which one do you think it is? It's very obvious. You have to do an MRI of the chest. Now, the exam, clinical sciences was in English before, but now the exam is translated in other languages: Chinese, English, French, Portuguese, and Spanish. And this is to illustrate how well you guys do. So India is the largest country that gives the highest number of candidates. But it's one of the leading countries in performance, so you should be very proud of yourselves. And last year, from 415 candidates that did the clinical exam, 295 passed, which is excellent. If you compare to other countries, you are very, very well positioned. So now you have an idea of how well you perform as well and how your training programs are. So congratulations, because you are doing extremely well. There are merit awards for the people who perform the best. And last year we had merit awards from all these countries. So you can see again that you see very outstanding people widespread all over. It's not that people in one place are far better than the other. It all depends also individually on each one of you to try to perform. Last year there was no one from India, but every year we have merits from India. So let's see if this year we have a lot of candidates from this country who get merit awards. Now the advanced examination is an exam that you can sit after you have finished your training, when you are a young ophthalmologist, when you have acquired a little bit of experience, a little bit more knowledge, and more clinical acumen. And it's 85 questions, and you have to get a single best answer, and 4 options, but there are extending matching type questions. There are 10 of these. And there are also a statement, a scenario, or picture-based question. So I'll give you an example that is a very beautiful example. So you see this question, and you have at the bottom A, B, C, D, and you have spaces in the question, gaps A, B, C, D. And then you have the possible answers. So you read the stem of the question. This year-old patient presented with something. The ultrasound revealed a smooth, dome-shaped mass with high internal reflectivity. Fluorescein angiography reveals C. Optimal treatment is D. So you see the image, you see that there's something here, but it extends all the way here as well, so it's involving the macula as well. It's a dome-shaped, well-defined, regular raised of the retina. So what are the possible options? It could be an exophytic retinoblastoma, yes. But the ages that you see there, if you use your common sense, and even if you don't know the answer, by reading the options, you can narrow again. So if you have common sense, you can do it. Retinoblastoma, exophytic retinoblastoma. When do we see retinoblastoma? At what age? Typically, what age? Don't be shy. At what age do you see a retinoblastoma? 2 years of age, 1 to 2 years of age. You don't see it later. It's exceptional. And the options that you have there is 10, 28, 70. Yeah? So it's unlikely that this is a retinoblastoma. You've already ruled out something that could be. What about a malignant melanoma? What do you expect to find in a malignant melanoma? So again, it could be 70, the age, but then the other options may not match. So probably it's not a melanoma, so what does it match? So if you think this age, a male, a 28-year-old male, what would you expect in a 20-year-old male? Successful, a businessman, smoker, lots of coffee. What can it be? A central serous maculopathy, yeah? CSM? So, if you know what CSM entitles, immediately you will get all the other answers. So, let's go to the first one. We know that it's a 20-year-old. And if there's edema of the macula, probably you will come because you have blurred vision, not because you have photopsias or because the optometrist saw you and referred you. And you also know that there's very early fluorescence. And obviously you know the treatment. It's not enucleation, it's not a plaque, it's photodynamic therapy. So initially you read the question and you think, oh my God, this is so difficult, I have no idea what's going on. But if you put common sense, even if you have less or a little bit of limited knowledge, and if you look at the stem and the possible answers, you take your time, you will be able to answer the question logically. And this is another question of the advanced exam. So you see a picture, and the question is, the 46-year-old Asian A woman in the figure below lives in a rural village. She has had a sore, irritable eye for many months, and relatives have tried to remove a lash with forceps bought at the local market. So this is not crazy stuff. This is a very real scenario. Regarding this lady, which one of the following statements is most likely to be true? A single dose of azithromycin should be given after any surgery. B, she needs no medical follow-up for the possibility of recurrence. C, she should best continue with lash removal alone. D, the most likely diagnosis is active trachoma. So first, what do you think this lady has with the history? So first she has trachoma but not active, so you know it's not active. Okay? So now you've ruled that. And then if you have a good knowledge of the condition, you will know the answer. Yeah? Okay, so once you've passed the ICO advanced exam and you have had a local face-to-face examination or have a license to practice independently from the Ministry of Health, then you are able to use the post-nominal fellow of the International Council of Ophthalmology. But if the ICO also developed guidelines, and if you know the guidelines of the management of diseases, you've done already a huge amount of your homework. If you know and you've read these guidelines, you know a lot. For the basic sciences, you should use books, library reference books, books for optics and refraction, publishers' websites and contacts. And for the clinical, similarly, you should use all these options. And these are a few little practical tips that can be useful. They seem to be ridiculous and common sense, but sometimes with the stress of an exam, we forget about these basic things. So please think about them. Write your own book. I remember when I was a trainee, I used to write a lot. And everything you write, you remember it. And you remember a lot. So try to write your book with all the different conditions and lay it out logically in an organized way, and also include reference so that you are up to date. And search the web. The web is very useful, but you have to do it in an organized way because it's so much out there that you don't know where to start. Pictures are essential. You can read a condition 1,000 times. If you've never seen it, it's as if you are blind. So look at as many pictures as you can, and you will see that the exam has lots of photographs, and the whole question is based on the picture. So if you have never seen a condition, you start with the wrong foot. Study together. That's a very dynamic and entertaining and useful way of practicing for an exam, preparing for an exam. And the other thing is that if you are together and you practice together, you learn more by your mistakes. Every time I couldn't get an answer from one of my mentors, I realized that I would never forget the right answer. And practice also writing questions. That's very useful. Now, many trainees use only books of questions and answers, and they try to memorize the answers of these questions. And that's the worst mistake you can make. It can be misleading, it narrows your knowledge, and it doesn't give you the right approach. So it's important to practice later on with questions and answers, but don't study only by learning and memorizing questions and possible answers. It's not the right approach. But answering all the questions accurately is the best way to obtain a pass grade. And because the accuracy of answers is very important, it's still possible to pass the exam without even completing all the questions. So it's better that you make sure that you get right the questions that you know, even if you don't manage to finish the whole exam. Education and technology reading lists. So we already talked about book lists, some questions, free access to websites. Now, this is very important. The exam has a clinical application. The exam, what tries to do is to prepare you to apply the knowledge to clinical conditions. So there's nothing tricky about the exam. There are no tricky questions to make you fail the question. That's not the purpose. It's just to make sure that you know what you are dealing with. So the ICO exam is a test of knowledge at a very high level, and it's a huge achievement to pass it. You have to be analytical, and as I showed you the examples before, you must have common sense, and there are no trick questions. But the other thing is, don't feel bad if you don't pass the first time. And there are lots of very, very prominent ophthalmologists that always did really bad in exams. So it happens even to the brightest minds. So try again, and try as many times as necessary. You will get there. But prepare, think carefully each question, and obviously read the syllabus so that you read all the topics that are expected to be asked about. Don't waste time. We sometimes waste a lot of time. So don't try to work out a system that if the right question, one was C, probably the second has to be D, and the other one is E. There's no system. So forget about that. Have a common sense, and don't try to learn all questions. Don't try to be so clever and so cocky that there are tricky questions. There are no tricky questions. And remember, learning is understanding. If you understand what you are dealing with, if you understand a condition, then you will get the answer. And this is an example. If you know what dominant optic atrophy is about, and you know what the gene responsible dominant optic atrophy is, then you will know the answer straight away. Be prepared. So sleep well the night before. Make sure you have a good breakfast so you have enough energy. Arrive early with time at the exam. If you arrive late, you are already stressed out. You squeezed all the adrenaline of your body, and you will be exhausted by the exam. And relax, and remember to go to the toilet. This sounds ridiculous, but sometimes we make those mistakes. And before the exam, take the day off. Don't study until 2 o'clock in the morning the night before. What you didn't learn, you will not learn the night before. So the day before, relax, take a rest, sleep, do something nice, and come very rested to the exam. Be precise, quick, and accurate. Always read the instructions very carefully. Again, in the rush to start answering the questions, we don't read the instructions, and we just go straight into the question. It's very likely that you're going to make mistakes. So know exactly what you're expecting, how you should be answering, how you should mark the paper, and make sure you do it right. And don't answer all questions initially if you are not sure, because then you will make the mistake. Only answer those questions that you are absolutely sure that you know the answer. And then when you finish with those, go back again to those where you have doubts and try to think a little more of those questions. You don't have to finish all questions to pass, as we say before, but you have to be accurate and precise. But it does help if you get all those questions. Now, the foundation assessment is an amazing tool. It's free for you here in India, so you don't have to pay for that. And I'm going to pass over to Nicola to explain to you about the foundation exam, because you should practice with this exam before you go to the other exams.
Thank you. So as Dr. Amaya said, India Society is a member of the ICO, and with that comes several benefits. One of those we mentioned before was the reduction in fees, and secondly, the foundation assessment is free of charge. So the foundation assessment is $50 US to those societies that are candidates from a non-member of the ICO. But for India, when you apply for either the basic or the optics or the clinical standard exam, you get this free, which is great. So we introduced this in 2013, and it's an online assessment. It's open access, which means that you can use books and you can open your internet browser on another computer and look up the questions and get information to answer these questions. And it prepares you for the standard examinations. But one thing we say is that you can't have your senior professor behind you giving you the answers, because that's not allowed. But you can use books and the internet. And it's a unique learning assessment tool for ophthalmologists at the start of their career. So as I said, it's free to you guys because your society is a member, and they come in 3. So we have 50 questions for the basic science, 20 for the optics and refraction, and 50 for the clinical sciences. And the system allows you 20 minutes per question to answer the question. So we feel that this gives you enough time. If you know the answer, you can answer it straight away. Or you can look it up, so look in the book or on the internet. And each question will have a confidence indicator. What we do is we ask you how certain you are that you've got that question correct. And there are 3 options that I'll talk about in a moment. So as I said, it can be taken in conjunction with the ICO examinations, and it's online. It's blueprinted to the ICO curriculum. It's open access. There's no monitoring, although there are some security features that will look into the way you answer the questions. It's instant results, and there's a downloadable certificate at the end. So you can download the certificate. It gives you a grade from A star to D, or if you're not successful, then an F, unfortunately. But if you wanted to improve on your score, so say you achieved a B, and you thought, right, now I've done a bit more training, I've done another further 6 months in my institution learning more about ophthalmology, then you can go back and take it. But for the second time, we'll be charged $50. But you can improve on your score, nice certificate that you can put up on your wall. So this is what it looks like when you log into the online system, and we ask for your name and your details and email address, which allows us to communicate with you your results. And as you can see, you have basic science training, optics and refraction, and clinical sciences. Now, when you apply for one of the standard exams, we'll issue you with a voucher code, which is your free of charge code that you can enter in and click, and it will take you directly to the foundation assessment. Now, within each assessment, so basic science, for example, here, the executive committee have split the subjects into several sections. And what this allows you to do is, as through your training over the year, you can think, right, okay, I've learned genetics, I'm going to go and test myself. So you can click on section D, complete the questions, and then you don't have to take the next section for another 2 months until you've had that training. So it's quite a flexible system. I'm not an ophthalmologist, so I'm not going to go through the questions like Dr. Amaya, but this is an example of the question. And the system allows pictures, diagrams, videos, quite interactive. And you can click on what you think is the correct answer, and then your certainty indicator, which is at the bottom in green. So I've clicked what I thought to be right, and I've clicked I'm very certain of this. So you have to decide how sure you are. And what that means is that if you're very certain and you have the answer correct, you're awarded 3 points, so +3. If you're incorrect and very certain, you get -3. Reasonably certain, +2 and -2. And then not certain, correct, you get +1. Incorrect, we don't award you any marks. So it doesn't impact on your score, but what it allows us to do is to give you a detailed analysis at the end of how your knowledge is compared to how confident you are. And statistics show, and the information from our educationalists, is that females they've got the knowledge, but they're less confident than their male colleagues. So a lot of males decide, yeah, I know that, I've got that. And a few years ago, I had someone come up to me and said, I'm a really good surgeon, but I failed the exams. All my colleagues passed. And so obviously he had little knowledge and very confident, but this allows you to assess that. So successful candidates will be issued with a grade A star to D, as I mentioned, and you get a nice certificate at the end. With this system, it also allows you to go back and look to see whether you have the correct answer. It will tell you if you are incorrect, what the correct answer is, and it provides you with detailed feedback. So it will give you information of the condition or the subject that it's on, and it will also allow you then to go and look up. It'll tell you where you can look up on the internet or in the books the correct answer. This is the detailed analysis, and unfortunately, as I said, I'm not an ophthalmologist, so my results were very limited. However, I thought I got the question correct. And so the blue tells you your knowledge, and the red is your self-evaluation, how confident you were. Also, it's interpreted into this other graph, and unfortunately I got an F, but it gives you 2 options of looking at your confidence. You can go into each question as well and get the percentage score for each subject. Now, quite similar to the foundation assessment is the ICO app, and this is on your held hand device, It's on Android or Apple, and this is free of charge. And I recommend that you actually download this because there's 85 questions on there. They're all questions from past papers that have been used and trialled and tested, and it gives you some idea of the types of questions that may come up in the exam. It allows you to set up a profile. It allows you to get some information about the standard exams on there. You can put a time pressure on or take it off, as well as the confidence indicator, and take it off, and you can test yourself, and it's quite a fun thing to do with your colleagues and peers. Again, there's pictures and videos on there, and you can see how certain you are. It gives you the correct answer if I was incorrect on this one again, but also provides you with some feedback. Again, it gives you some detailed information of your analysis at the end. And these are the codes that you can scan and get it direct access on your handheld device. And if you need any further information about this, then our booth is N133. So please come along and we'll give you some details on how to download the app. As we mentioned before, the future, what would we like to do, the ICO and ICO exams? We would like to run subspecialty exams, which we are implementing in conjunction with the AIOS, and also we're going to hopefully open this up to the rest of the world. And we would like to run all of our exams online. So the subspecialty exams which I spoke about, we're introducing these. And we piloted one last year, and we're piloting the others hopefully at the end of this year. Eligibility is 3 to 4 years of general ophthalmology in training. It would be preferred that you'd pass the ICO clinical sciences exam, and you just have at least 1 year's training in subspecialty at your university or academic setting. So we've looked into online exams, and as I said, we'd like to have all of our exams online. And after going into detail about this and how we may be able to do it, we've put a plan of 10 years in place. We think now is the high-stakes exam. It's difficult to have the basic science, optics and clinical on because there's so many candidates in one day taking the exam. And one of our biggest centres, for example, is in Egypt, and we have 600 candidates all in one room taking these exams, and it's impossible to make sure that everyone has a computer and a secure internet to be able to do that. So we're looking at ways in the future we can hopefully achieve that goal. But at the moment, we're implementing the subspecialty online, and we're looking at the advanced exams, going online in the future. And we're gradually moving with the times, and hopefully we'll have all of our exams on time online at some point. So Lewis is going to talk about the fellowships.
Just to finish off, because I'm sure you are exhausted and hungry, but the fellowships, as I said at the beginning, the fellowship changed my life completely. I'm a completely different professional. So you should all aspire to do a fellowship, and you can aspire to do it abroad and go to another country. You should thrive for that. And there's nothing that is not achievable if you don't fight hard enough. So be a fighter, and you will get further away than you ever expected. I can tell you from my own experience. So the team that is in charge of the fellowships is Dr. Berthold Zeitz, and he's the director. It's in Germany. And Cordula Obermeier is the executive, so is the equivalent to Nicola. She's a very nice lady, extremely efficient, very, very approachable. So if you have any doubts, you can send her an email, and you can discuss things with her directly. And the programs, as we mentioned before, were instated in 2001. And there have been more than 920 fellowships granted. There are more than 920 3-month fellowships. And there are 3 one-year fellowships since 2010. And there are 111 training centers around the world. So there's a lot of choice. And there are 19 subspecialties that provide fellowships. The 3-month fellowship provides more or less $6,000, and there are 60 to 80 awards every year. There is a 6-month fellowship in retinoblastoma, and There are 6 awards for this. And there are 2 other fellowships, the R.F. Helmerich FS and the Fred Hollows Foundation FS fellowships. 2 awards a year and 1 award a year, and these are up to $25,000. But look, all the spectrum of subspecialties that you can get. Surgical vitreoretina, 23% have been given throughout these years. 15% on pediatric ophthalmology, 12% cornea and external diseases. Someone yesterday asked me about cornea. So 12% of the fellowships have been cornea. Glaucoma, 9%, medical retina, 9%, oculoplastics, 9%, cataract surgery. Ocular oncology, 3%, uveitis, neuro-ophthalmology, community eye health. Someone asked me about community eye health as well. General ophthalmology, comprehensive ophthalmology, retinoblastoma, ocular pathology, and low vision. So you can get anything really based on your preferences, the needs in the community where you are trying to work and develop, etc. Now you have to have completed a residency program, and the specialist exam in ophthalmology must be passed. Applicants must be under 40 years of age, but there can be some exceptions if you are working in an area where your expertise is required and you may be older than 40, there can be exceptions. And one of the conditions is that the applicant must return home after the training and apply the knowledge gained. So if you think that a fellowship is a passport to go and practice in a different country, you are expected to come back and work. I never expected to go back to the UK. I worked in my country for 10 years, and just by chance I ended there, which just happened. And applicants who have passed the ICO examination will receive a special consideration, of course. And applicants from countries with ophthalmologic societies that are members of the ICO will receive special consideration as well. So the selection criteria involves lots of things: application performance, the candidate's qualification, if they've done research and have done teaching activities, as we said before, if they have had a work experience internationally, if they have done any charity work, and obviously the relevance of the candidate's home institution and the country. And of course, there must be a balanced geographical representation, so we shouldn't give fellowships only to Indian trainees. We have to spread them throughout the world. And these are the points that we already mentioned before. But look at the distribution of the fellowships over 83 countries. So 68 in South America, in Sub-Saharan Africa, 134 did fellowships. From the Middle East, 164 candidates. From Eastern Europe and Russia, 117. From Afghanistan, Nepal, and Pakistan, 106. But you see again, India has had the largest number of fellows 206 candidates from India have done fellowships through the ICO. And these are the training centers. So there are 53 training centers in Europe. There are 15 in US and Canada, 3 in South America. There are 7 in the Middle East and Africa, 15 in India, Nepal, and Pakistan, and 17 in Asia, and 1 in Australia. And it's growing. There are lots of centers that want to offer fellowships for the ICO, to the ICO. We already talked about the benefits: cultural exchange, improving your teaching skills, improving your language skills, making friends, networking, etc., etc. These are some examples of people doing fellowships and training abroad. And these are new centers that want to offer new fellowships in the future. And these are more activities. This is the website. And this is how the structure of training should be. So the facilities, which is the hospital, the academic facilities, the systems in the hospital, and the dedicated teaching time. The training process, so you are admitted as a junior trainee, you pass your exams, and then you have the pass out. And then, because many countries don't have board examinations, the ICO offers these exams to give you the level of knowledge or the evidence of the level of knowledge that you have. You do your foundation exam first, the first year or so. The second year you can do the optics and refractions. Third year the basic sciences. And when you pass the fourth year, or when you finish your standard clinical, you have your face-to-face exam, you pass. And once you've passed, you can do your advanced exam and you get your fellowship. And of course now you got the subspecialty. You're more than welcome then to attend the next meeting in Barcelona, a fascinating, multicultural, cosmopolitan city with amazing architecture and delicious food. Thank you very much indeed for your attention, and I hope you found this a little bit useful in one way or another. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you, Nicola. I think just to outline the fact that from a strategic perspective, what we would like to do as an ICO is we look upon ourselves and as you as healers, and we would like to play an integral role in not just your establishing a standard for healing in your practice, but in your career of healing in the practice. So what we'd like to do as time goes on is to form an association with you after you take the exam, so that we can continue with ongoing assessment, updating of knowledge, and a forum for exchanging ideas and experience. We'll take questions now. On basis of two of the, I'll just come to you in a second. On basis of two of the questions that have been asked most frequently at the stall. Number one, you don't need to be part of any training program to take the examination. As long as you've structured your training and you feel confident, you can assess yourself against an international standard. And secondly, you don't need any postgraduate qualification to take any of the examinations. But for fellowship, yes, you should have put in your training before you apply for fellowship. And I'll now open to questions to these people. Yes, please. Do you have to work in an academic institution to reach the fellowship level?
No, you don't have to. No.
We see the biggest advantage of the ICO exam and ICO fellowship program is that it gives everybody an opportunity to assess themselves and to be trained with a fellowship. Because quite often, no matter how extensive postgraduate training programs in the countries, they are not able to cover all the population, and all the people who would like to be trained don't often have an opportunity to be part of a structured fellowship training program. And we see this in the United Kingdom all the time. The university may approve training positions in a hospital, but the hospital may not be willing to fund it. So you might be able to train 6 or 8 people, but because the money is there only for 3 or 4, we restrict it. This is an opportunity for everybody to be able to acquire the knowledge, be assessed at an international level, and then take a fellowship. Yes, please. The passing, is there a percentile or is there an absolute percentage of passing?
Every year, based on the performance of the candidates, the passing mark changes.
It is a percentile. The percentile also allows us to post-correct any ambiguities that there may be in the questions, because we are not only giving everybody a paper in English, we are also giving in translated language. So there are times when the feedback comes as there's been a problem with 1 or 2 questions. So we are able to rule that out and then still assess the candidate. So you don't suffer but it's not a comparative level, it's a percentile level. Yeah.
But more or less every year is more or less similar, because we know the quality of each question, so we try to make it as even as possible. But there are small variations. We see how it changes a little bit, but it's based on how you all guys perform.
There is an emotional attachment to trying to hold it against the candidates. We don't sit around in a room and saying there's no way we are getting more than 5 people through or 4 people through. So it is much more, and all the people on the exam team are practicing clinicians. There are ophthalmologists helped by a statistician. So we make sure that even our assessment tend to be objective. But everybody around the table who looks at the marks and analyzes it is a practicing ophthalmologist. Yes, please.
Yeah, if you look at the website, you have all the possible textbooks that you are advised more specifically. The American Academy provides, for example, excellent studying options. That they're brief, that they're clear, they are concise. So that's very helpful. As I say, don't memorize questions. That's the wrong way to do it. But you can practice with questions.
Yes. There's no negative marking.
No,
there's no negative marking system.
For the advanced, there used to be, but we removed that, so there's no negative. Yeah. But on the foundation exam, yes, the foundation has the negative, but not the advanced or the clinical sciences. No, if you get it wrong, you get it wrong, but you don't get this reduction of points or anything.
But during the analysis and structuring of questions, we make sure that even if you're a habitual gambler, you won't be able to pass the exam by guessing alone. So,
yeah. Okay, I think we should finish now, and if you have any questions, please feel free to come and ask us.
We're still there on the stall today and tomorrow, so please drop by. It's N133.
Yeah.
And if you have any other questions, because originally a lot of people thought that it was only for the trainees and those that want to take the examination. Actually, it's very important to have the knowledge about the examination, because the trainers who find that they've got people working with them who may not be part of a structured program can still guide them towards taking the exam and helping them with it. It's much more of a system which enables everybody to take the opportunity. That's all. At the end, I'd like to thank my colleague, the President, Hugh Taylor, who, despite saying that he might have to leave halfway through, has stayed through the whole session. And Nicola and Luis for their very valuable contribution. I've heard Luis's presentation for the first time, and I thought the most significant thing any system can do is to put forward an example of someone who's actually benefited from it. And I've personally found that very useful. Thank you, Luis.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming.